Hello everyone, in this video I would like to share with you my design for an automated Nosh-bean farm. Nosh-beans are used to make tofu and its upgraded variant, spicy tofu, and both of them are high quality food. However, Nosh-beans present several problems that needs to be overcome in order to efficiently farm them. Now the first problem is their fertilizer. Nosh-beans require ethanol in order to grow, and ethanol, unlike water, requires several production steps before it can be produced. The second problem is the temperature. Nosh-beans require the surrounding temperature to be between 0 and minus 25 degrees Celsius, which means that the farm needs to have a solid cooling system to maintain this temperature. In addition, the farmer will also need some sort of cold protection to avoid getting hypothermia when working the farm. Now, let's see how this design tackles these problems. First, let's discuss the production of ethanol. Ethanol is made by refining lumber using the ethanol distiller. Lumber goes in, CO2, polluted dirt, and ethanol comes out. One ethanol distiller can produce enough ethanol to fertilize 15 nosh beans. One ethanol distiller also requires 7.2 wild arbor trees or 2 domesticated ones in order to run 100% of the time. Now, in this design, there are 10 nosh beans fed by one ethanol distiller and 6 wild arbor trees that provide the lumber. Now, there is a very important reason to why I didn't opt for 15 nosh beans, which I will explain a bit later. Now, the ethanol that comes out of the distiller is at around 73 degrees Celsius, which means that it is too hot to be supplied directly to the beans, and therefore it must be cooled down. And this brings us to problem number 2. Only now there is also the requirement of cooling down the ethanol in addition to the farm itself. Well, it turns out it is possible to solve both of these issues with a single strike, by utilizing the ethanol as both a fertilizer and the coolant at the same time. That is, cooling down the ethanol, then moving it through the farm to cool it, and finally feed it to the nosh beans. Okay, so let's see how this design accomplishes this theory and solves the problems mentioned earlier. So this design utilizes very minimal automation and doesn't feature any sophisticated game mechanics. Instead, it relies on a robust piping system and utilizes liquid bridges to do all the fancy footwork. So the system can be broken down to 3 sections. The farm, which includes the chamber housing the nosh beans and the feeding pipes. The cooling system, which as usual includes the trusty aqua tuner cooling loop, which you would probably recognize by now if you watched my other videos. There is also a dedicated video for it, which I will link in the description below. And the machinery room, which houses the ethanol distiller and other supplementary machines. The process starts at the ethanol distiller. Lumber is supplied by either duplicants or conveyor rails from the arbor tree farm. The hot ethanol coming out of the distiller enters the left liquid reservoir from this pipe. Now, on the way out of said reservoir, the ethanol is checked for temperature by the thermal sensor. If it is below minus 10 degrees Celsius, the thermal sensor output red, and the ethanol is sent directly towards the farm via this pipeline. However, if it's above minus 10 degrees Celsius, the sensor outputs green, activates the liquid shutoff valve, and directs the ethanol towards the aqua tuner cooling loop through the right reservoir, through this pipeline. That's the right reservoir going through this pipe, and this is the entrance into the aqua tuner cooling loop. Both of those reservoirs serve as buffers to allow fluid flow through the pipes and avoid clogging. In addition, they also provide an easy means to empty the piping system and store the liquid if one needs to make any adjustment to the piping system. For example, if I just disable both of those liquid reservoirs, just gonna speed it up and we're gonna see what's gonna happen. Ethanol that was found too hot and was sent to the aqua tuner undergoes cooling until it reaches -10 degrees Celsius and is then pulled out of the loop and is sent towards the farm. It enters this junction and enters the farm, the same way liquid that comes out of the left liquid reservoir. As you can see, after we disabled the liquid reservoirs, all liquid is now stored inside the reservoirs and no liquid is flowing through the system. This allows one to make any amount of changes, and once you are done, you can just enable back those liquid reservoirs and ethanol will continue and flow into the system just like before. Both of those thermal sensors are set into an identical setting of -10 degrees Celsius and above. So once ethanol reaches the farm, it enters the radiant pipes that run through the farm, allowing the ethanol to cool the surrounding area. At the end of the path, the ethanol is fed to the nosh beans, and any leftover ethanol is passed through the steam turbine, cooling it through this pipe, and ends up where it started, the left liquid reservoir. And then the process simply repeats itself. Now, before moving on, I want to explain my previous reasoning for not utilizing all the ethanol and building all the 15 Nosh-bean styles. Now, this system needs to be net positive in ethanol production. It needs to produce more than it consumes. This is mainly because the ethanol coming out of the distillery is only 500 grams per second, where a pipe can house 10 kilograms of liquid at a given time. If all ethanol is consumed, there will be no circulation and pipes will move small amount of liquid, which will also greatly reduce the efficiency of the aqua tuner and therefore greatly increase the power consumption of the system. Long story short, prevent using all 15 nosh beans for a single distiller. I recommend not going above 13. Up until now, we covered the core operation of the design. The purpose of all other machines not mentioned until now is to deal with the byproducts of the distiller and provide some nice secondary functions. The distiller outputs both CO2 and polluted dirt in addition to ethanol. The dirt is picked up by a sweeper, loaded into a conveyor rail, and delivered to the compost bin outside. The dirt that comes out of the compost bin is then picked up and delivered back into the farm to fertilize the nosh beans. The CO2 is handled by two machines, gas pump and a carbon skimmer. The skimmer will remove CO2 from the room if the density of the gas exceeds 2000 grams, and it is controlled by an atmos sensor with the appropriate setting. The gas pump is connected to a gas reservoir and stores CO2 for other uses, like for example soda fountain. The gas pump will work only if the gas reservoir is not full and the gas density in the room exceeds 2000 grams. Again, controlled by the atmos sensor and an end gate. The gas pumped by the gas pump passes through a filter made from a gas shutoff valve. This ensures that CO2 is delivered to the reservoir. All other gases are expelled outside. The setting is on the gas pipe element sensor is carbon dioxide. The final bit of automation connects the left liquid reservoir and the distiller. Since the ethanol production is net positive, we don't want to clog the entire system eventually with ethanol. So to ensure steady liquid flow, if the liquid reservoir is 90% full, it will deactivate the ethanol distiller. And finally, let's cover some important notes. First, the aqua tuner can be made from either steel or gold. When the farm is initially built, the aqua tuner will work for lengthy periods of time until there is enough ethanol in the system and the temperature have been stabilized. After this point, which takes roughly 4 to 5 cycles, the system will stabilize and the aqua tuner will work a lot less, which means that the power consumption of the system will drop drastically. This is why aqua tuner made out of gold is also suitable. This also means that this design can be built as early as one has access to plastic to build the steam turbine. Secondly, in order to prevent the farmer from freezing, one can make a warm sweater in the textile loom to protect the farmer from the cold and allow him to operate the farm without the risk of hypothermia. And that's pretty much it about this design. I hope you found it useful. My duplicants will now take the stage and demonstrate the construction of the Nosh-bean farm from scratch. So for me, thanks for watching and enjoy the clip.